Okay, hi everyone. I'm Harold. What I thought I'd do was, it's sort of less of a talk, but more of a kind of narrative, pictorial sort of journey. Initially, I'm going to talk about the Mothership collective and then how that kind of sort of segued into PeckhamTV through the collaboration with the People Speak. And then hopefully I'm just going to mention a recent project that I've undertaken in China, which kind of deals with, maybe contextualizes some of the issues that we're talking about today. So just to start off, that's my phone. The Mothership Collective was a project that I developed with South London Gallery in 2006. And I was invited to kind of sort of program a season of kind of artist-led workshops in the gallery. The main impetus for kind of doing this was an interest that I had in sort of 50s, 60s, 70s musicians, people like Sun Ra and George Clinton, and their use of kind of sort of sci-fi in what might be called Afrofuturism. So the basic premise for that project was taking over the gallery space and turning it into a kind of sort of Afrofuturist type space with kind of various cheap metallic materials. And there was a 3-week program of artist-led workshops. So I invited various artists to come up with project ideas that would link into the idea of kind of futurism, utopia, space, sci-fi generally, and would kind of instigate some kind of collaborative engagement with the audience, the participants that came along. So, I mean, these are just some images of the space and some of the projects that sort of came out of that. So we had this kind of central kind of core space in the gallery, and these lovely gold curtains, which I insisted on having. And some of the artist project that took place, this is a project instigated by Barbie Asante with Andrea Ancinas, and they formed a funk chorus, sort of based on a kind of gospel choir model, and invited the participants to kind of rehearse and develop sort of popular like Earth, Wind and Fire songs and a little bit of George Clinton Parliament as well. And actually, this is an ongoing project, and I think Andrea about to do this on the South Bank in a couple of weeks, I think. So some of the other, I invited there were various kind of practitioners. This was a fashion designer called Julian Roberts who did a presentation about black holes and then did a workshop about negative space in relation to pattern cutting. I did a project, a little offshoot project with Charlie Chaplin Adventure Playground, which is near the Oval. And I invited the children and young people there to create alien messages, or messages for aliens, and they assumed various identities and backdrops, kind of did a green screen setup. And then I sort of programmed it as the Alien Broadcasting Corporation, and it was presented by Mangela Davis, who was my take on Angela Davis, the Black Panther activist. So at the culmination of the 3 weeks, there were sort of performances and objects and comic books, and we had a sort of launch event to showcase some of those, and the project was open as an exhibition for a week. So these are some of the results of various kind of artist projects that sort of took place in the space. And then we had the launch party event. That's actually Ming Wong, who we had an intergalactic speed dating event, which was very successful. And the funk chorus performing at the opening, and a little bit of dancing, a bit of boogieing. So after this project, I was invited by actually Emily's predecessor, Mark Wilshire, to develop or propose a possible public artwork following on from the Mothership and the idea of kind of sort of Afrofuturism, proposing a public artwork for Peckham Square. And we sort of received a research and development grant to sort of try and develop that. In the meantime, Mark left and Emily came on board and took over the directorship of Peckham Space. And we had sort of several discussions about that process, really. And I think quite interestingly, the focus shifted from sort of thinking about a fixed permanent sculpture for Peckham Square to thinking more about the process of actually sort of asking people in Peckham what they'd like to see happen in that space. So from that conversation, we invited the People Speak to come on board and sort of launch into a series of kind of workshops and meetings using the People Speak talkie as a kind of sort of forum for instigating discussion and generating ideas. So from those number of workshops, we would ask people about the idea of, you know, the future of Peckham and what people would like to see in Peckham Square specifically. But I think what was interesting was, certainly for me anyway, was what came out was people's perception of Peckham and how that seems to kind of reinforce a kind of negative media portrayal. And I was quite surprised, really, in terms of sort of that very often we'd be speaking to people and they'd be kind of regurgitating a lot of the negativity, and there didn't seem to be a kind of a sort of balance in people's perception. So it was quite hard to sort of generate sort of positive ideas around what was going on in Peckham. And at the time we had, at one of the sessions we had a young person suggest the idea of creating an advert or a campaign to promote Peckham it will give a more balanced view of Peckham. And that really became the kind of sort of nucleus for sort of going from this sort of Mothership talkie asking people about the future of Peckham to actually PeckhamTV and the idea of instigating another series of workshops and asking people to kind of sort of think about what this campaign would be or what would be a good strategy for giving a different perception of Peckham.